As we are recording, I'm still pondering what this title is going to be for this episode. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I have writer's block or something. I don't know. But we're going to talk about the accusations that have popped up in the past couple of days about Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Just so happened right when the vote is going to happen for him to be Supreme Court Justice. I mean, it's so convenient that out of over 30 years that right at this time, right now, the coincidence of that, really. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about the Emmys, and, it's going to be real little because apparently a lot of you didn't even watch. Probably none of you that are listening watched. So that, and we're going to talk with Courtney Balaker, writer-director of Little Pink House. All this on this episode of Trent Chat.
From the highways of America, here's the podcast where we talk politics, a little entertainment, some culture, and this and that, from the road to your ears. This is Trent Chat with your host, Brian Bledsoe.
Hey, thank you, Hillary Kennedy. This is Trent Chat. I'm your host, Brian Bledsoe. And if you want to connect with us, whether on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or Snapchat, it's all the same name, Trent Chat 24/7. I sound a little more upbeat. I don't know. I guess if you've been listening and hearing me do the intro, that felt a little different how it came out. I don't know why, but yeah. So appreciate everyone coming in, listening, and like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on. And I'll tell you the hot trend right now, this is Trent Chat, so that will be Judge Brett Kavanaugh's accuser. It's been all over the news right now, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first off, let's go ahead and get these Emmys out of the way, because it's not going to be much, because it's basically the same old song and dance. The liberals, these progressive leftists, socialists, communists, whatever you want to call them. Anyway, they'll come up on stage. They said, how evil Trump is, and we hate Trump, and Republicans are stupid, GOP sucks, and Christians are they're stupid, and blah blah, and and look at our great films, and we just pushing our leftist agenda, and we just pat ourselves on the back and eat $50,000 steaks or whatever like that. I don't know. That was the Emmys wrapped up. So that's it. Except for, let me say one other thing. I did see a trailer for a TV series last year that once I saw it, I knew it was going to win an Emmy, and it did. And that was the assassination of Giovanni Versace. That won an Emmy. I saw the trailer. I haven't seen 1 minute of that show. Don't plan on seeing it. Not going to see it. But as soon as I saw the trailer, I said that's going to win an Emmy. Mainly because it was talking about Giovanni Versace. He was, a flamboyant gay guy, talking about his relationships with other gay guys, or whatever. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, that's going to win an Emmy. I don't even know who was the nominees. Obviously there were no nominees back then. It was just the series haven't even premiered on FX at the time. But once I saw it, I'm like, that's going to win an Emmy. Unless something else, crazy, something crazier came out. But I guess nothing else did, because it won. And yeah, so that's the only thing about it. And I don't even know if I even mentioned it on this podcast. I know I mentioned it to some other people just by, I don't know. It was just an observation I had. So that's enough on Emmys, because they just, doing what they do. Same old. It's going to be the same thing when the Oscars and the Golden Globes and, take a pick. So let's go ahead and move on to something that I don't know how many of you who are listening probably knew about. Maybe y'all have. But in the midst of all this, hoopla about the accuser and talking about Brett Kavanaugh in the past couple of days, D.C. decided to approve another spending bill. Yep, there we go. Another billion. Well, this is over $800 billion spending bill, appropriations bill. And I remember back in March, President Trump said, I'm not going to sign another one of these. Like, he felt, he was reluctant to sign the bill back in March, which was over $1 trillion. And now here we are again, over $800 billion. And I'm pretty sure he's probably going to sign this one. So we're just kicking the can down the road. The cycle continues. Just keep on spending like we just don't like it's nothing. But I'm pretty sure right now people are probably we're saying when it comes to this bill, well, we had to pass this bill because we don't want to have a government shutdown right before the midterms. I mean, we have so many competitive races that are going on across the country, and Republicans are probably going to lose the House, and we don't want to add more controversy before the midterms. Yeah. Okay. More excuses, another excuse, because after the midterms, it's going to be, well, we don't want to have a shutdown to look bad for 2020 or whatever. There's always going to be a crisis. There's always going to be something. There's always going to be any excuse to continue to spend. Look, it's not rocket science, and look, you don't have to be you don't have to have a PhD, a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, even a high school diploma to understand that it's never going to be a good time to stop spending. It's never going to be a good time to where you will have to rein in spending. There's not going to be this pristine, opportune time like, all right, everything is great that we can stop spending right now. There's always going to be something going on. So when are you going to suck it up and start doing it? Apparently, it's probably going to be never. It seems like it, at least. Like I said, when we're not going to never have that time. So one day, I don't know, either just stop worrying about your next election and worry about actually being the fiscal conservatives that you're claiming to be sooner or later. But apparently we're not going to do it right now because, like I said, we got to worry about these midterms. So we want to make sure we don't shut the government down right now, especially. But like I said, there's always going to be something. There's going to be. I'm pretty sure in December there's going to be something. Actually, I would not be surprised in December because that's when this bill ends. So in December, I would not be surprised actually. Let's say, for instance, if the Republicans hold the House, which is unlikely, but let's say if that happens and they hold the House and the Senate, I would not be surprised that they actually fight for reining in spending at that particular time because the midterms are passed and we got some time before, obviously before 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden they grow a spine and want to rein in spending. The problem is that they're not going to stick with it. They're going to do it for maybe a couple of weeks, and maybe there might be a shutdown for a week or two. But you know what? I'll take that back because it's December. So I would not be surprised they might do it because they might feel, especially if we're talking about Republicans holding the House and the Senate, they might feel more bold to actually rein in spending. But then again, it's December, so you know what the crisis is going to be then. You don't want to shut down the government before Christmas. I mean, that's what it's going to be then. You don't want to take away the gifts from the kids of these government employees, do you? I mean, I can see it right now. I can see a news report on CNN where you got these kids under the tree looking all sad because daddy couldn't buy them a present because the government shut down. I can see that. But that would be the crisis in December. And so they'll probably pass another bill then. So then all that's with the Republicans winning the House. Now, if the Democrats win the House and in the midterms, which is more likely. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised all of a sudden we see these courageous fiscal conservatives just pop up out of the weeds and just start talking real bold about, hey, we need to stop spending. We need to really rein in the fiscal. We need to be more fiscally responsible, even though I can't do crap about it, because all the past 2 years we had the chance and we failed to do it because we were scared about every little crisis that was going to come up. But now that we have no power, let's talk tough now about being fiscally responsible again. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that happens too. So I'm just saying that now. I'm just trying to say it just in case it does. And so I will sound smart. But I just kind of feel that's what's going to happen. So, but yeah, like I said, that happened today. So if you was hearing all this news about the accusing of Judge Brett Kavanaugh, this was getting passed today. So yeah, that, just wanted to bring it up. But we'll talk about those the accusations a little bit about that. But before that, let's hear a word from our friends from the Founding Project.
Hello, Trend Chat listeners. If you like the Founding Project's Civics Education video series, Civics for All Ages, and our educational meme series, we think you will love our new website. Join us at thefoundingproject.com and be a part of the civics movement. The Founding Project is a 501c3 education nonprofit. Please join us today.
Hey, what's up? This is Kaya Jones, and you're listening to me here at Trend Chat.
So, like I mentioned in the beginning, there has been an accusation to Judge Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault, and like I said, this came out kind of all of a sudden in the past couple of days, right before it was coming up time to vote for him to be in the Supreme Court. And first of all, let me say this is the burden of proof for anyone that is connected to a Republican in it, or of any sort, whether they're considered conservative or whatever, or just Republican. The burden of proof is so low to the media, especially for it to be covered, in comparison to when a Democrat has even something similar to this. Like, say for instance, if this sort of accusation was going towards a Democrat, you would never hear it for one day. Like, well, we need more proof than this. I mean, this is not enough. I mean, we need like medical records, and we would need a live stream of the accusation happening, and we need a notary, and we also will need DNA testing along. We ask for medical records, but we need some fingerprints, blood samples, and I guess what you call carbon 13 dating. We'll need some of that. I mean, the burden of proof they were asked for any sort of accusation toward the Democrat is so much higher when it comes for them. But when it comes to anything connected to a Republican, anything that puts a Republican in a bad light, I could say something right now that if it was something that made Republicans look bad, if I said something, all of a sudden CNN probably call me tomorrow. And all of a sudden this episode get like 1 million hits, and they were like, Brian Bledsoe said such and such that Republicans are whatever. And next thing you know, I can get a book deal tomorrow. Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised this accuser gets one. But hey, so now one thing in particular that like I said, this could be true. Now, I'm not going to deny that. It could be true. It could be somewhat true. It could be not true at all. But I would say this, even if this is 100% true, this account from this accuser, the fact that we have nothing else between that point back in high school when this happened, from that point to now, over 30 years, there are no other incidents. Nothing else has happened. You don't have like a pattern of that happening back then, and then something else a couple of years later, and this happened with that woman, and this happened, that woman here, and a couple of years, another incident, another one here. Like, you don't have a pattern. You just have this that happened back then. So, even like I said, even if this was 100% true, then this still should not be held against him as far as being confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. Just by this should not be enough. I feel like all he should do is apologize and then be confirmed. Because obviously there's nothing else in between. We don't have like a serial pattern here of misconduct or anything like that. You're basically going to use something that happened 30 some odd years ago to impugn his character now. I mean, you know what? I'll say this too, and some people might not like this in particular, but there's things about, let's say if it's Robert Francis O'Rourke, who is also known as Beto, who is running for Senate in Texas. So he has a record, but these things were like 20 years ago. Now, I don't think those things should be held against him. And now, those are things people should know. Okay. But if you don't have anything else in between what happened back then to now, like I said, with him, if there's not a pattern from that point to now, then I feel like kind of like the statutes of limitations, or as far as even for Beto with whatever going on with him. And so unless you have something else in between those 20 years and apart from what happened back then with a DUI and everything, I wouldn't hold that against him. Now, that being said, I definitely hope he loses. But he should lose, given the fact that, that he's a sanctuary city supporting, baby killing, anti-Second Amendment socialist. That's why he should lose. He shouldn't lose, as far as because of what he did 20 years ago. I would say the same thing about him as I say about Kavanaugh now. I feel like it kind of goes both ways. I don't feel like they're these past transgressions, especially if we're talking about a long period of time ago, and you don't, like I keep saying this, if you don't have a pattern of things that is going on since then. So that's why I just mentioned that. And I just feel like this is kind of being used. This is just another stalling tactic by the Democrats right now to basically scare Republicans, which is not hard. They're very skittish, and any sort of negative news story from the Democrats and from the media, which are both the same, they definitely get very, very scared. And something like this, now all of a sudden we have a hearing coming up now on Monday, with the accuser and Judge Kavanaugh, which as of right now, the past hour or so, the accuser has now asked for a full FBI investigation before she testifies. To which I think the FBI has already said they're not going to investigate. So I guess she's not going to testify or what. I don't know. Was she out here trying to make demands before she testify? But look, either she testifies on Monday or whatever. And if she don't, then they need to just go ahead and vote and just move on. And so, that's my spiel on that. And that's just wanted to mention that. Get that off my chest. It's stuff I've been thinking about all day. I just been wanting to get it out. So next we're here from our interview with Courtney Balaker with Little Pink House, but before that, let's hear a word from Politichicks. Hello, this is Brian Bledsoe, host of Trend Chat. Also, contributor at Politichicks.com. Here to tell you about the new book called Politichicks, A Clarion Call to Political Activism, with over 300 pages from contributors like myself, talking about topics such as education, social issues, healthcare, the Second Amendment, and of course, activism. I encourage you all to check it out at Politichicks.com, and is also available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Commentary as subtle as a sledgehammer. This is Trend Chat.
You know, eminent domain is one of those practices that can kind of make one question actually how free we really are. Because when government wants your land like bad enough, I mean, they can basically take it. And a case that came up in the early 2000s was a Kelo versus New London case, and it was presented before the Supreme Court, and that kind of changed the game as far as when it comes to eminent domain. And there was a movie made about it in the past year that has been released, and we are pleased to have the writer and director of Little Pink House, Courtney Balaker, with us. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
All right. Well, first let me mention this. Little Pink House is available on iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, other digital outlets, as well as on DVD. Now, anywhere else that I missed?
Yeah, and most cable providers have it available for video on demand as well.
Okay. I guess kind of give us a little bit of a summary as far as the case of Kelo versus New London.
Sure. Suzette Kelo was a nurse living in a blue-collar town called New London, Connecticut, and she had raised 5 boys. They were all out of the house, and she was leaving a bad marriage, and all she wanted to do was just find a peaceful place to kind of start the next chapter of her life. So she found this dilapidated cottage on the Thames River in New London, bought it, fixed it up with her bare hands, and looked forward to spending the rest of her life looking out at the water at the end of a crazy hard day. And shortly after she bought the house, she found out that the city wanted a multi-billion-dollar corporation to come in and renovate the city and build a facility that would benefit Pfizer, which was on the other side of that river. They had just invented Viagra, and they had a feeling it was going to be a big deal, and they were looking to expand, but they didn't want to go to New London. It wasn't big enough. There was a very expensive sewage cleanup that they would have to put money into, but the city really wanted them there to create jobs and tax revenue and clean it up. And so they lured Pfizer by saying, well, you don't have to spend any money. We'll use taxpayers' money to clean up the sewage plant. And, oh, you need more space? We'll get you more space. We'll consider this neighborhood blight and use eminent domain to acquire it. Well, that neighborhood was exactly where Suzette Kelo's dream house was. And so she said, no, you can't have it. And her neighbors said no. And many of her neighbors were elderly people, some of whom were born in these houses. Some people were in their 90s and wanted to die in these houses, and they were being told to leave. And so they fought, and they fought all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And because of their fight, millions of Americans got to keep their homes.
I saw that the beginning of this process was with your husband, Ted, who was also a producer of the film. He covered this case back in 2005, correct?
Yeah, he was producing for ABC News at the time, and he actually remembers exactly where he was when the Supreme Court decision came out in 2005. He was following it very, very closely. I was not as familiar with the case, and it was brought to our attention that a book existed called Little Pink House, written about the entire saga of Suzette Kelo and her neighborhood. And I read the book, and I was just stunned and astonished that this really happened, and that it could happen in our country, and that it was considered legal.
Okay, I know I wanted to ask, like, how was it? I guess in real time with him covering it and with the case, and like you mentioned, like I said, he knew where he was when the decision went down. And was there any thought of? I mean, I know you mentioned about the book. Was there any thought about anything else like this movie back then?
No, there really wasn't. I think that when the decision came out, I think people were just so completely shocked that the decision came out the way it did. Most people anticipated, her to win. So I think that, when it happened, people were just sort of, reacting to the shock. It was a very divisive, issue. When the decision came out, most people hated the decision. I think 85% of Americans thought that this was a very dangerous decision in terms of what it means to Americans' property rights. So the book was written a few years after the decision came out, and then we got involved in terms of adapting the book into a film about 4 years ago.
Okay, and I don't know, this is more of a statement, but it's just something I kind of want to ask you in particular, because to me the details of this case kind of seem like a public-private partnership in a way, where a private company uses the government to take land where the private company probably would have more obstacles in their way as far as getting whatever land they were looking for. So they will partner up with the government to make it easier for them to take the land, which in a sense kind of, makes it cheaper for the private company, but also it kind of mitigates the public relations issue if one like this arises.
Yeah, well, this was a classic case of cronyism, like you just described, where you have people in government teaming up with people in a private multi-billion-dollar corporation, where they have all the power and the little guy doesn't. And that's, and unfortunately it happens a lot. And unfortunately it happens in poor communities, typically, because they don't have the connections and the resources to fight this type of cronyism. So yeah, our hope in making the film was to, at the very least, shed a light on the dangers of cronyism, in particular with eminent domain abuse, which is what this specific story is about. But it really was just your very typical case of cronyism, which is awful, and we really hope that by shedding a light on it, that we can at least start conversations amongst people as to how this type of thing needs to just stop, be put to an end.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, the reason I use the term public-private partnership, because that's just kind of the PC way of saying it.
Right.
I do. I agree with you, but that's how I see it. I see it as well. So now one thing I mentioned just a minute ago, as far as kind of mitigating the public relations, because whenever someone looks up this case, it says Kelo versus New London. But I mean, it's not just New London. It's like it's the corporation as well, which was Pfizer. But unless you dig into the case, you don't even know about the corporation. It's just the the public sector is the one that takes all the blame when this happens. So I feel like that's another reason why a lot of this cronyism it goes on.
Right.
Now, in the decision, I know you mentioned about what happened as far as a lot of times these partnerships and whatever that where the balance leans against the poor, put it that way, and or in the sense of people or small businesses as well. And so in this decision, the decision was 5-4, and like given the details of the case, when you went to various film festivals, because this film won a number of awards, I just wanted to ask you, was there some shock at these film festivals when they found out who was for and who was against?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's almost always shock amongst audiences at film festivals, and even when we had our theatrical run, most people that were not familiar with the case or the story at all and were learning of it for the first time by watching this film, most people assumed that it was the conservative justices that voted against Suzette Kelo and her neighbors voting for the city to take the property and basically hand it over to private developers to benefit Pfizer. And the fact of the matter is that's not the case. It was the liberal justices who voted for this because they deemed it public use. They thought that it was considered public use because of the tax revenue that it would create, and it would be for the betterment of the town. But essentially what it allowed the city to do was to basically take private property from a very, blue-collar, working-class neighborhood and hand it over to very wealthy people. So yeah, again, and it's a tough story to view through a political lens. It's not really a partisan issue because most people agreed, no matter what side they were on, that this was a really bad thing. In fact, we had a congressional screening of the film back in April when we opened in theaters, and it was hosted by a Democrat and a Republican who don't agree on anything pretty much, but they both agreed on this, that this was a horrible decision, that this type of thing should never happen again. And so it's one of those rare issues that unites people across party lines.
Yeah. Now, did any of that shock become like any sort of backlash, or was it just mainly just where people just kind of just mentioned that, oh, I didn't know that it went that way, or was it like, did it go further than that?
Luckily, most people, it just kind of opened their eyes, meaning they just made them think about that very fact that, well, maybe the world isn't as black and white as I thought, or maybe, the liberal justices don't always vote for things that I would agree with. There was one instance where somebody got really angry about it. It was during a Q&A in San Francisco, and he actually told me that wasn't true. You can look it up. It's
so
he was just very adamant that I was wrong, and he insisted that Scalia wrote the decision, and Scalia was on the dissenting side. So I don't know. I mean, I think that for some people it's really disturbing to them, and it's hard for them to accept because they want to believe that Ruth Bader Ginsburg always makes the right choice, but in this case she didn't. And so again, it's like this. It's not a black and white issue, and I think that people, but like I said, most people, it made them really. They just sort of nodded their head, even though they were surprised. But it made them really think about that.
So the person just said that you were wrong. That that it was a 5-4. That these justices didn't say go for or against. I mean, was it just a case of where he just didn't, where he was thinking about another case, or what?
Well, he claimed he read the decision, and I was completely confused by the entire conversation. I mean, I had to at some point just tell him that, and very, very politely, I just said, look, sir, that's not true. Scalia did not write the decision in which Suzette Kelo and her neighbors were bulldozed out of off of their property, and you can certainly look it up after this Q&A. I mean, he was trying to dominate the Q&A and make it this sort of political statement, but that was only one instance. I mean, for the most part, people, they just kind of, they were surprised but accepted it.
How long, I guess, when the ball started rolling into making this film, how long did it all take before it got released?
It took from the minute we optioned the rights to the book and Suzette Kelo's life rights to finishing the film. It was a period of about 3 years, which in Hollywood time, that's pretty fast for a film to get made. We pretty much we did everything. My husband and I, we raised the money, we put the cast and crew together. It was 3 years is not a long time to get a movie made these days. Sometimes it takes 10 years. So we were very happy that we were able to accomplish what we did in that period of time.
Yeah. Now, you're talking with someone that knows nothing about how films are made and the process in that. So I guess one thing that just kind of popped in my head, I mean, if we're talking about a more, I guess this is like I guess you would call like an independent film. So those films take even longer, I'm guessing, to get made as opposed to, the major studio films.
Yeah, typically, because independent films don't have the support of a studio. They're they have the task of raising the money
Mm-hmm.
independently, and then, attaching cast can be kind of tricky when you're not affiliated with a distributor or a studio. So yeah, it could typically be more challenging, but then on the flip side of that, there's a lot more freedom. You're not beholden to a studio creatively. You have a lot more freedom in terms of how you tell the story. And that's why we made it the way we made it. We did not want to make it with the studio. We wanted complete creative control of the story. We felt like we owed it to Suzette Kelo to be very true and honest to her experience, and we didn't want anything to pervert the truth. So that's why we made the decision to make it independently.
And, speaking of the cast, I mean, you got, acclaimed actresses, Catherine Keener and Janine Triplehorn in this film. And it's funny, back when I was thinking about having you on, I just saw Sicario too. And
Oh yeah.
and so and then I saw her in there in the movie. I mean, I've seen it in other films as well. So how did they get get involved in the movie?
Well, we started with Catherine. I've always been a huge fan of her as an actress and an artist, and we didn't think we would get her, but we just gave it a shot and sent the script to her agent, and luckily she really responded to the material. And then after she signed on, we sent it to Jean, and they had never worked together, but knew each other and did want to work together. And yeah, we were just really, really fortunate to get the caliber of talent that we did for the film.
Okay. And now, I guess my next question to me kind of feels a little silly because I know when I ask you this, it's like this is so second nature for you. But but for someone like myself that, like I said, hasn't done any of this, and I just want to ask, like I mentioned earlier, this film won a number of awards at film festivals, and as someone I've never been to a film festival at all, and so what is it like even going to a film festival, let alone having your film played at a festival?
Oh, yeah, film festivals are great. We played at some fantastic festivals. They were really supportive of the film. We premiered at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, and we played at a number of other ones. I mean, going to film festivals is a really great experience. You get to meet other filmmakers. You get to see other independent films that are at the festival. You get to see your film played in front of an audience for the first time, and then do Q&As and talk to people about it. It's just a very vibrant, exciting atmosphere. We really had great luck in terms of good audience attendance at all of the festivals. As you mentioned, we won a number of awards, and it was a really great experience. I'm really glad that we did it. That wasn't our plan to do the festival track, but we had some opportunities that presented themselves, and we took them, and it was really great.
Now, well, speaking of Kelo in the Kelo versus New London case, Suzette Kelo, what did she think of the film?
Oh, she was really happy with how the film came out. Obviously, it's very bizarre and surreal for someone to see a film made about one of the most tragic parts of their lives. So it's not easy. But I think she was so supportive of the film. She came to as many screenings as she could and did Q&As with me and Ted, and very supportive of how the film came out. And I think for the first time in her life, or I should say since this ordeal happened, I think she really saw people relate. I mean, people who had tears in their eyes would give her standing ovations at the Q&As, would come up and hug her and thank her for her bravery and her fight. And I think that was really gratifying to her to see people really get it, really understand what she went through and why she did what she did. And overall, she's become a very dear friend to us. And I've had the honor and pleasure of meeting some of her sons. And so it's been a really great experience.
All right. So where can everyone, I guess, if they want to get in touch with you, whether or know more about the movie on social media, websites, where can they go?
Yes, littlepinkhousemovie.com is where you can find everything. You can find out how to buy the movie, how to rent the movie, how to bring the movie to your local theater. If you want to make an event out of it, littlepinkhousemovie.com. We're on Facebook, Little Pink House Movies, Twitter, Instagram. So yes, please check us out. Please see the film, and please contact us if you have any questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. And like you said, everyone that's hearing this, check it out.
Thanks so much for having me.
This is Dana Lash, and you're listening to Trend Chat.
Yep, and thanks to Courtney for joining us. So, well, I guess we're pretty much at the end. I appreciate everyone listening, everyone that has been listening so far in this, here we are with this episode 110 now. And, yeah, so I don't think I said enough, and just wanted to mention that. And also, before we go, something I guess I definitely should have mentioned in the beginning, everyone that has been affected out there in the North Carolina, South Carolina area, or surrounding states, and as far as with Hurricane Florence, I hope everything's going well there, and that whatever whatever that has been going on, and that it would be a speedy recovery out there. It's funny, just one of these memes that went around about Hurricane Florence. You were seeing this thing about Anderson Cooper, and they were showing him standing in a ditch, and it was saying that he was reporting about Hurricane Florence, and turned to find out that wasn't even, what the picture they were showing was like 8 years ago. But the point remained the same, even though it was misreported as trying to say it was this year. But still, if you see the picture, it does kind of paint the picture of that, trying to make the damage look worse than it really is, even though that was 10 years ago. So but yeah, like I said, I hope everyone's getting everything together, and whoever everybody's been affected, just start to rebuild. So also, before we go, I also found out today being September 18th, it's the 71st birthday of the Air Force. Have some relatives who were in the Air Force, and happy 71st birthday. Also, the reason I kind of thought about it too is because Marvel debuted the first trailer for Captain Marvel today, which when I've been kind of wondering, when are they going to show this, show a trailer for this movie coming up? And then when it came out this morning, and then I was kind of reminded of the 71st birthday of the Air Force, and then like, I'm pretty sure Marvel did it this way on purpose. I'm guessing, or maybe I can doubt this. It was a coincidence, but yeah. So in the comic books, Carol Danvers, who is Captain Marvel, is a pilot in the Air Force, and so I don't know. Today was the day that they decided to debut the trailer for Captain Marvel, which looked pretty good. Just glad to see something about the movie. It looked more of, this is definitely more of a teaser, and obviously there'll be more coming out in the next couple of months, because the movie doesn't come out until March of next year. So, but yeah, so kind of cool to see that. Here they're wrapping me up now. So kind of like the Emmys or any other award show, they're kind of just kicking me off the stage right now. So, and well, we're almost out of time anyway, so I can keep on talking and they would just cut me off, and then I'll be just talking to the mic and none of you will actually hear me. So anyway, appreciate y'all listening, and actually we'll be back again on Thursday, hopefully. So until then, we'll chat with you later.